Welcome back. Good morning, Richard. It's good to see
Good
you.
morning. We're almost there, huh?
We are
Almost
almost there.
Wednesday.
Happy holidays, happy Christmas, happy whatever it is. It's
Whatever you're
happy.
celebrating, whatever you're happy about.
That's right. I am looking forward to our topic today because it is something that is really a challenge, I think, for most of us, even those of us who we kind of study this stuff and
Yeah,
we work hard to help other people with these things. But we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas forgiveness today.
right. Yeah, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I'm struggling with forgiveness, both giving forgiveness and receiving forgiveness. And I'm not talking about the idea, the concept of forgiveness, but I'm talking about a real life. I am experiencing a real life problem that I just can't seem to be able to resolve.
Hmm.
In our case, it's been a rupture in family relationships, which are common, especially at this time of year. You either enter the holiday season with fractured family, or the family fractures because you've been together, over the holidays. But I'll spare you all the gory details. But I've been struck. Our family unit has been struggling for about a year, and I have adult children, so I'm not talking about kids living in the house. These are adult children. There's anger, resentment, a lot of hurt, tons of hurt, bad hurt feelings, and anger, just a mix of emotions. And of course, with the Christmas holidays coming, of Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, all of these emotions that are usually there get intensified, and the solutions seem to become more remote. So the emotions get bigger, and the emotions get bigger, and the solutions seem to disappear.
Right.
One of the things I laugh about now, people say, give it time. And I think, are you talking about what kind of time are we measuring here? Because
Right.
should I give it weeks? Should I give it months or years? Because I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of years. I mean, the ladder's in short supply right now. So I don't have 20 years. I don't think I have 20 years to work this out. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the sentiment, give it time, but time is a precious commodity for me right now.
Right.
Um, and for a long time, I thought that every problem had a solution. Bernie, remember that course we used to teach on communication?
Hmm.
And that book, he made like every problem is solvable. All you have to do
Right.
is communicate, right? I was naive. I don't, and now I realize, or at least I'm learning, that some problems can't be solved unless everybody participates.
Well, and I think that's an important point is that it's just like every problem we say that it takes two to tango. It takes two
Right.
to have a fight, or it takes two to argue, or but it also takes two to resolve. It takes two to find some resolution or some solution to a problem.
Mhm.
And that leads to some problems. There may be a solution, but that solution is unattainable, or at least temporarily unattainable.
Yeah, it's unattainable. There is one, yes, but as you say, it takes two. No single person can fix a marriage. A marriage is a bonding of two people, and both people need to be involved, fully engaged in the solution. If
Right.
not, it's simply not going to work. One person can't solve the problem. And when you get to these irresolvable, irreconcilable, unsolvable problems, what you're left with, and this is the part that I have been struggling with,
Mhm.
what you're left with is sort of a heart full of anger, hurt, resentment,
Mhm.
all kinds of really problematic, difficult emotions. And you don't have any place to put them. They just sort of racket around in your body, causing trouble. Okay.
Mhm.
So by the end of this calendar year, by the end of, as we enter the end of this year before the new year begins, I had to conclude that there was really nothing I could do about this. I finally as hard as I tried, there was nothing I could do to fix this. But at the same time, I know that I can't live with this bitterness that's coursing this anger. And it's anger. I mean, anger and resentment are coursing because it robs me of any joy. It's always in the way. Okay. It
Mhm.
just hangs on you like a wet blanket, like a piece of wet. You know, when you get your clothes wet and they're cold, and it's like no matter what you do, you can't get comfortable. That's how this feels. It robs you of joy. It wrecks your sleep. It's a distraction at work, and it just sucks up a lot of time, energy, and attention that I don't have a lot to spare. So this is taking a lot out of me. I also learned, and I didn't realize this initially. You know what a firestorm is? Like when the city of Dresden caught on fire. What happens during a firestorm is that as the buildings start burning and the fire gets more intense, it actually sucks oxygen into the fire. Okay. And that's when you get what's called a firestorm. There was one in London and one in Dresden during World War II. Like a firestorm, I finally had to realize that, and I think this was the breakthrough, that my anger and heartache sucked more oxygen in and made my emotions worse. I was feeding the emotions I was feeling were feeding themselves and
Right.
making them worse. And I said, I have got to do something because this is becoming a firestorm. So I decided to forgive.
Yeah.
Well,
Decided to
oh
forgive.
well,
As easy as that.
right. And so, there's nothing to it, right?
Yeah, but forgiving is really difficult.
Wow.
It's
So
not
it's
as easy. I think even with kids, we say, well, you need to just forgive them. Tell them you're sorry, or and as though forgiving is just a switch that you flip, and it's okay. I've forgiven. It's all good now.
right. It's not.
Work that way.
And it doesn't work that way. And we're going to talk about some of these types of forgiveness. Um, we're not. I would hazard the guess that most of us are not very good we're not very good at forgiving. All
Yeah.
right. It's hard to do. I know that in as a parent, when you seek forgiveness for your children, you feel like you're giving up parental authority.
Mhm.
Um, why should I forgive this person? They're the one who hurt me, so I'm gonna wait until they apologize to me. So it is a complicated dance that we do, but it's a complicated process. And but if you don't find a way, you're going to live in this firestorm where emotions just keep feeding. It's not going to go away. I mean, and so you keep feeding it.
Well,
Um,
I think what happens is sometimes people will say, "Well, I've forgiven them for that." But as we work with people here, when they say those kind of things, you get into the conversation a little bit more, or maybe even a couple of sessions down the road, and you realize, have they really forgiven? Because there is still a lot of emotion behind a lot of that. And so we sort of give it the label of being forgiven, but we really haven't put the fire out.
that's right. And
There's still
yeah,
something going on.
right. And that's the first thing I learned here is that there's genuine forgiveness, and there's something, I don't know, forgiveness light. There's like when you apologize. So I'm sorry, that I stepped on your toy and broke it. Oh, I'm so sorry I did that.
Mhm.
That's one kind of I'm sorry you apologize.
Right.
Um, we're talking about a different kind of thing here. And so I thought, man, I'm not sure where to go with this. So I said, let me look some stuff up. And I found a definition psychologists typically use, found it very helpful. Forgiveness is not merely accepting what happened or ceasing to be angry. People say, well, forgive and forget. No,
Mhm.
no, there's some things you cannot put behind you. You can't just forget, right? So it's not just accepting what happened and ceasing to be angry. It is, and I think this is the core of the issue, is it involves a voluntary transformation, a voluntary change in your feelings, attitudes, behaviors, so that you're no longer dominated by the resentment. And that's what bothered me, is that I knew I was getting dominated by the resentment. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that it's so important. I think maybe the most important word within all of that is voluntary. Because what, and the way that I interpret voluntary as it's used in that definition is intentional. And I think of the word intent a lot because so often we tend to believe that if we say something or if we think something, that it's just going to automatically happen. Like,
Right.
well, I said I forgave them, so I forgave them, but
Mhm.
you still have all these feelings, and so there has to be an intentionality to forgiving. There has to be an intentionality behind. I have a couple that I've worked with who, there were some problems in their relationship, and they decided that they were going to stay together despite some of these big problems. But one of the people in the marriage, is still really angry with still brings up and talks about this incident that happened that caused all these problems. And we will sit in session and they will say, "Well, yeah, oh yeah, no, I forgive for that." And it's, well, if you forgive them for that, why do you keep bringing it up and using it as a weapon against them? Because
Right.
if it's still a problem for you, if you're still hurt by it, then you haven't forgiven them. You're just sort of the idea of forgiving them. That's nice, but you haven't truly forgiven them. And so we get into this circle because the forgiveness really hasn't happened. It's just been a label that's been put on something, but what's inside hasn't changed. And
Right.
that requires a voluntary, intentional process of changing the way that you are experiencing that
That's
in
right.
event or whatever.
Right. And it is a process.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you can't simply, many people say, well, I'm the bigger person, so I'll forgive her. But
Mhm.
it continues to be a problem. Like you
Right.
said, it continues to be a problem.
Yeah.
Then that's not that's not what our goal is. That's not really forgiveness. That's not genuine forgiveness.
Right.
That's forgiveness light. That's saying, well, I'm magnanimous. I'm going to be the big. No, that's not how this works. And what I'm learning is that's not how this works. I tried that early on, earlier in the year. I thought, well, okay, I'll just forgive her and not worry about it. But it still was creating anger, resentment, frustration in me. So I said, okay, I haven't completed this process yet.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing I learned is that forgiveness, genuine forgiveness, is a release of resentment or anger. Like you said, if it keeps bothering you, you haven't reached forgiveness, right?
Right. That's an important piece as you get to the second part of it. So
Mhm.
it's the release of that resentment or anger. But that does not necessarily mean that there's reconciliation. It doesn't
Exactly.
mean that
Right.
there's a solution from that. It doesn't mean that okay, everything is back to normal, everything is fine now. We can now pretend like it never happened. It doesn't mean that that's the case. It just means that I'm not going to be. I have come to a point where I'm not going to be angry about it anymore, so
Mhm.
that we can move on and I'm going to take actions to demonstrate that I am no longer angry about it.
Right. Yeah. It's that release from resentment, the release
Right.
from anger. And second, you're right. You may never see the person again. We talk a lot about estrangement. Estrangement has been an issue, and many families are suffering with estrangement. People are not talking to each other. It doesn't mean that you're going to reconcile your differences, and you may never see each other again. That
Right.
doesn't. That's not the issue here. It's
Right.
you forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. Forgiveness is an internal process that you have to work your way through. The reason it's worth doing is because if you can reach genuine forgiveness, it will resolve some of your own emotional turmoil. And
Right.
that's really the goal here, is that I have to get my emotions, my feelings under control. That's my obligation. And if I have to forgive, somehow internally forgive, then the benefits will be that my emotions will be reduced. They'll be less intense. Okay.
Right.
This is what I wanted to know. That's the part that I wanted to know more about.
Right. And I think that, as we're moving forward, I think it's important to recognize that um, forgiving isn't necessarily saying that it's okay. Um,
Exactly.
we have both shared, these have been it's been an interesting year for a lot of reasons, and there are many things that have happened that are just not okay that they happened.
Right.
But the fact that they're not okay that they happened doesn't change the fact that they happened, doesn't change the fact that it hurt us, but it also doesn't change the fact that whether or not the other person cares.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so so none of that really has anything to do with what you're experiencing as it relates to forgiveness.
Right. Right.
If I forgive somebody, that's not saying that I think it's okay that what happened happened. What I'm saying is that I'm going to choose to not maintain and foster these negative and harbor these negative feelings and emotions about it.
Mhm.
It may mean that I never speak to you again.
Right.
I'm
Exactly.
not going to let it continue to affect me the way that it has been affecting me.
Right. That's the ticket and I have no expectation.
Right,
I'm going to forgive you, not unconditionally. That's
right,
not what and this is the tricky part. I'm going to forgive you. I don't have any expectation of you accepting it or of you returning and forgiving me for whatever I've done. This is an internal process that I must do by myself for myself, which has nothing to do with anybody else except the person who hurt me.
hmm
Now, the next question is, are there things that should not be forgiven? Are there some things? Yeah, there are. There are some things that are so egregious, they're so destructive that forgiveness is not only not possible, it may not be desirable. And
right,
I think, abuse comes into that category. If you don't forgive your abuser,
right,
because you want to keep that door closed. And if
right,
you say, well, I've forgiven you, especially if the other person knows that you've forgiven them, it may open that door up and you're going to get abused again.
right.
So,
Yeah, and the process that you go through for dealing with a history of abuse is similar because you similarly don't want to go through the rest of your life being angry and resentful and all that kind of stuff of what happened to you of that abuse. So you want to go through a process, part of what we do in therapy is to help a person process through those experiences so that they can maybe find a different way to experience or process or manage those emotions. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're forgiving them for what they did to you. That's
exactly.
that's a different, so similar goals, but different rationale, different process.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So we wouldn't ask you to forgive an abuser, especially if it means the abuser might be able to re-enter your life and continue abusing you. Second, forgiveness cannot be unconditional. In other words, you're going to forgive somebody, but you don't forgive and forgive and forgive and forgive unconditionally. And, you're not a doormat. You're not available to be taken advantage of. You're not available to be abused.
Right.
And so, yes, I'm going to forgive, but it's not unconditional. I don't have any expectations, but I'm also not going to forgive you to the extent that I become a victim again, that I'm victimized. So no, it's not unconditional forgiveness.
Absolutely.
And so, but if all things being equal, it seems that the benefits of forgiveness probably outweigh the costs that
Mhm.
our anger, the cost that we're paying for not getting to some type of forgiveness.
Right. Yeah. Holding grudges and maintaining that sense of anger and resentment and everything. There's plenty of research, too much research on, the negative effects that has on us. And so
Mhm.
it's almost like holding on to it and holding on to that anger and resentment and everything is almost like a double whammy. It's like you've already been hurt from what happened. And because
Right.
you're not forgiving, you're hurting yourself even more by holding on to those negative emotions that take a toll on your emotional and physical health. So,
Right.
yeah.
And a
Um,
lot of people talk about that. They'll say that very thing that yeah, you forgive and then you become available for abuse again, and
right.
that's not. So the benefits, there was an interesting article. This is not an aside, but it's an interesting way of looking at it from the point of view of evolutionary psychology. One of the reasons we're talking about the benefits of forgiving, and one of the benefits. So these guys who are evolutionary psychologists say, well, think about this for a moment. We want to maintain social connections,
Mhm.
and estrangement breaks those connections.
Right.
Okay, so that's why I hate estrangement because it breaks the connections. Why is that important? Because our brains are pre-agrarian. we're, we're evolving as a species, and we want to maintain our social connections. If you think about it for a moment, if you were a Great Plains Indian, Native American, you lived on a Great Plains, there were 200 people living in your village. As you need to get along with all those people because you need the protection
Right.
of the group. Okay. If you're a cave dweller in Europe 200,000 years ago, you need the protection of your group. Okay. So social connections were that's how you survived. You had to get along with people. So remember that our brains really want that. And estrangement is deeply painful because it breaks these social connections. That's why it hurts so much. We don't want to do that.
Right.
Second, you don't want to be seen as a person who doesn't forgive. You don't want to be seen as I don't want people saying, well, he's nice, but don't cross him because I'll never talk to you again, or he's
Right.
very sensitive. And if you make him angry, or if you say the wrong thing, he's going to cut you out of his life.
Right.
None of us want that reputation.
Right.
But ultimately, forgiveness is associated with psychological health. If we find a way to truly forgive those who have harmed us, it will reduce our anger. It will increase hope. It will calm our emotions, and that ultimately is what we're after.
Absolutely. And so, in some ways, we can think of forgiveness as a gift. And
Right.
it's something,
Mhm.
it's a gift. In some ways, it's a gift for yourself because, as you just said, it's certainly associated with positive psychological health,
Mhm.
physical health. It increases your overall sense of optimism and your overall sense of self and everything. So it's certainly a benefit to yourself. But you can also, again, like you said, there are certainly things that you can't and probably shouldn't forgive. But in cases other than those, forgiveness can also be a gift to the other person. Many times people hurt us, but they're either not aware that they hurt us, they don't understand that they hurt us, they don't really get it. And we harbor those feelings, and it just really has similar effects on them. And so, truly forgiving and saying, you know what, I forgive you. I'm going to choose not to be angry about this anymore. And so, hopefully, we can, get back
Mhm.
to our life together if that's,
Mhm.
appropriate. And it's a gift for them as well.
Right. That's right. And at this time of year, and that's what it certainly did to me. Um, at this time of year, I think forgiveness as a gift, let's think of forgiveness as a gift. It's given and received, but it's really a gift to yourself. It's really you're finally resolving this. Um, Forgiving, some people feel that they I've had parents say to me, I'm not going to apologize to my child. I'm the parent. I hear that all the time. Okay, I will not apologize to my children. Um, I understand that forgiving, especially children or um, somebody who's like somebody you supervise at work. I don't want to say that you think you're better than that person, but especially with parents and children, it's scary to apologize to your own children. But listen, we're not talking about a public humiliation. We're not asking you to take a full page out in the New York Times and make a public announcement. This is a
Right.
private act.
Right. But yeah, I think that people see forgiveness as sort of disempoWering. Like they like they're
Right.
giving away their
Hmm.
power or their I'm letting people, as you said earlier, we don't want people, we don't want to be a doormat. We don't want to feel like we're just letting people walk all over us. But forgiveness isn't that, or it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be forgive him, forgive him, forgive him, forgive, and just let yourself
Hmm.
get hurt over and over again.
Right.
Forgiveness is forgiveness really is as an emotional strength,
Mhm.
being able to, you know, understand you're feeling and
Right.
what you're going through, and then to process it in such a way that you can say, I can move on in my life. I can take some next steps in my life without letting this affect me the way that it does. Forgiveness isn't giving power to the other person.
Exactly.
You said
Right.
it's a personal thing.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so we have to separate that out. And because again, not saying forgiveness isn't saying that it's okay that it happened. It's just I'm going to choose not to harbor anger and resentment because of it anymore.
Right. Because I know what it's doing to me. I
Right.
mean, I'm fully aware of what it's doing to me. And for me, I think the only solution is forgiveness. And and like other gifts, we talk about gift giving, and people say, well, it's not what you receive, it's what you give, and those sorts of things that we talk about at holiday time. You use the word intentional shortly at the beginning of the podcast. You talk about intentionality. Yes, this is intentional. Um, the forgiveness, like if forgiveness is a gift, then it's really meaningful. It's more meaningful when somebody chooses to give it. And forgiveness begins with a choice. You have to first of all decide that you're going to, and then you work through this process. I am happy to tell you I'm not finished with the process. This is an ongoing thing that I'm going to continue working on, but at least I think I have a way. I think I understand forgiveness a little bit better, why I'm going to do it, and how the process will work. And I'll keep you up to date periodically, and I'll let you know how I'm doing. But it is a difficult process. It's a difficult journey, but
Yeah.
one that I think is worth taking.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that some of the things that happen when we are kids make it seem like forgiveness is something that should be easy, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it makes it very superficial. Say you're sorry, and if somebody says sorry, now say it's okay, and so that you guys can go be friends again. And it's like
Right.
it makes it a very superficial process, but
Right.
true, genuine forgiveness is deeper than that, and it's
Right.
something it's really internal to
Mhm.
yourself, to choose to forgive someone. So
Bernie, you touched on something really important. When we work with young children, we say, "Okay, tell her you're sorry for doing that. I'm sorry." That doesn't work when you're 35.
right,
It takes more. It's like, this is a simple notion when you're 3, but when you're 30,
right,
it's a very different process, and it's a more complicated process. And um, I'm going to continue working on it. I wish I could give you a simple solution,
right,
but I don't. With genuine forgiveness, there is no simple way. It's a difficult process, but a process worth pursuing.
absolutely. All right. Well, with that, that is it for today. We hope that you all will be able to process through that. There's some links in the show notes for a few articles on forgiveness, but working through this process is important and can be a great, yeah, just tying the bow on it, a great holiday gift for
Yeah,
yourself, for others.
would be.
So, all right, until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.